Now we can test the shade. And one thing I want to make you very aware of is that since there's nothing on this cord to stop the blind, if you were to let go of this cord, the cord could be pulled completely into the blind at this point. So before we tie everything back on, we obviously want to make sure that it works, but I want to make you aware, do not let go of this cord. I would even advise wrapping it around your hand to make sure it doesn't happen. Because again, if this cord gets sucked into the blind, then you're going to have to fish it out. That's going to be a lot of additional work. So you can see here, I'm able to raise the blind and lock the blind, and it's locked. I can lower it. The string isn't grabbing or hanging up. The blind is lowering nice and level, and everything is working as it should. So since we know that that's in good shape, let's go ahead and pull the blind back up to the top. We'll tighten the cording up a little bit. And what you want to do is make sure that the blind is perfectly closed. So it can't be open more on this side than on this side. You want to make sure that it's perfectly flat and level. The reason being is since we cut that knot, these are now two independent cords. And one cord controls each side. So if these cords are uneven and you tie a knot in them, your blind will always be uneven. So that's why as long as the blind is nice and straight, these two cords that come out, you can tie a knot in them once you put all the hardware back together, and the blind will always be straight. So let's go ahead and start with that process now of reassembly. So since again it is a risk that this cord will be sucked back into the blind before we have the appropriate stops on there, let's go ahead and get our primary cord and our stopper put back on. So you're going to put the cord through the domed part of the little bell here. So again, not the backhand side, not this side, but you're going to put it through the top, which has the finished end. Again, here sometimes it helps to go ahead and just wet the strings to keep them together. But I have now pushed them through, so we have that. Then you have a little plastic donut. And the plastic donut, the purpose of it is that it's small enough where you can tie a single knot and the knot won't be pulled through this. So it's kind of just to keep the cords from slipping out once you tie a knot. So same thing with that. We'll just put the cord through that. This is a very small hole. You may have to put it through one at a time, as it looks like I'm going to have to do in this case. That's fine. Don't worry about it, just as long as you get the cords through. All right, so the cords are through. So again, what we want to do is make sure that these are perfectly straight and even. So I'm looking at the blind, and the blind is nice and flat, and so I'm taking great caution to make sure that these cords, I'm pulling them the exact same length so I get to the end. You have to pull them at the exact same length, because when you tie this knot, this blind will be stuck at that angle that you tie this knot at. So with great caution not to let anything slip or move, again, I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot here. And it might be helpful not to tie this too tight initially, just in case you have to go back and untie it because it's not level, but I'm just going to go ahead and snug it up just a little bit. So what I'll do now is I will slide my little bell all the way down, and remember this mates up with our piece here. So in this case I have some extra cord on here as I tie my knot a little bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. Now all blinds give you a little bit of extra string, but before you take this blind apart, you're going to look at how much extra string you have. So with the blind all the way down, see how much string you have before the stopper goes into the blind, because that's how much string you have to work with. Obviously, you don't want to cut too much of the cording off, and then whenever you go to lower the blind, this is stopping the blind from lowering all the way. So just be cognizant of how much cord you have to work with as you cut and do this. In this case, we had about an extra 6 to 8 inches. So now that I trimmed that extra cording so I can enclose it in this little bell, I'm going to go ahead and put these two pieces together, and this just screws clockwise. So that's back connected. And this is a cord collector again. You may have 2 cords going in here, like in the case of this blind. You may have 3, 4, or in some cases even 5, depending on how wide your blind is. A lot of times they won't put 5 into one of these. They will separate this and you may have 2 of these. But even if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strings, keep in mind that all those strings have to be cut and tied at the exact same length, or the blind will lift crooked or bowed. So we have that done. Now we have our stop here. Now again, the purpose of this stop is you put this on to stop the blind at a predetermined level. You can snap it on and pull it up and down, it slides with some friction on the string, as you can see here. So you don't have to worry about setting it in the perfect place now, and it may have even changed. But just go, then you can't tell where you previously put it, but just go ahead and snap this piece on, and then once you install the blind, if you had it set to a certain location, you can adjust it as needed. And then the last step is to go ahead and put back on the end caps. These are the decorative end caps. Now on this end cap, you'll notice that it has a very small tab on it. It's kind of a half circle in the middle of it. This half circle always goes to the top of the blind, so that's how you can tell. And as you put it in, it too fits over the fabric in this top rail, much like our cord lock did. So this is another piece that we don't want to force. We want to work with it and make sure that it's sliding in. So the big bar here at the bottom and on the side, they actually go into the opening here. And it should line up. Once this is installed, and you can see it sliding in very easily, it will match the contour when it's installed properly of this front rail. It starts at the bottom, it's flush with the front, and it matches a little bend right here, and it's the same height. So if this piece is taller than the top of your blind or lower than your blind and going into the fabric, it's not on correct, and just go ahead and pull it back out and give it another shot. And you can see here that it even has a tab that goes above the blind. It can look like maybe it's not installed properly. No, that tab does go above the blind and it is visible, so don't worry about that. This is now installed correctly. Then you just repeat the process for the other side. Same thing. The little half circle goes on the top. And this too is going in without putting up a fight. So just push these in, make sure they're all the way on. In some cases, and not really so much with this blind, but on previous blinds, these can be a little bit tight. It would only be a little bit tight in the very end. If it's a little bit tight early on, it's catching the fabric. You know, pull it back out and work with the fabric. But as it gets to its very, very end, you can see a small gap here. I'm just going to tap it with a screwdriver to make sure it's all the way in. And you can go ahead and do that on both sides. Again, these can be brittle with age, so don't hit them too hard, but just tap them to make sure that they're in securely. And so you can see here, the blind is completely finished. I'm going to lower it all the way, well, as far as I can. And yeah, everything appears to be level. And as it's raising, it's level. So everything is good to go. The blind is now ready for reinstallation. Congratulations, you've now replaced a faulty cord lock on your standard lift, Bali, or Graber cell shades.